The cold October wind cut through Elena's thin black dress as she stood at the edge of her mother's grave. The dress didn't even belong to her. She had borrowed it from Mrs. Chen down the street because she couldn't afford to buy one. It was too big in some places and too small in others, making her feel even more out of place than usual. Around her, the members of the Silver Moon Pack gathered in their expensive black clothes, whispering behind their hands as they looked at her. Elena could hear every cruel word, even though they thought they were being quiet. "Look at her," whispered Rebecca, the Beta's daughter, 22 years old and still no wolf. "It's embarrassing." "Her mother was the only reason she was allowed to stay," added Tyler, one of the younger pack members. "Now what's she going to do? She can't even shift." Elena's hands shook as she gripped the single white rose she had brought for her mother. It was all she could afford after spending her last $20 on gas to get to the funeral. She had worked double shifts at the diner for months trying to pay for her mother's medical bills, but it had never been enough. "Elena." The deep voice behind her made her jump. She turned to see Richard, her stepfather, and the pack's Beta. His face was cold, showing no warmth even on the day they buried his wife. "We need to talk after this is over." Elena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She already knew what he was going to say. Without her mother there to protect her, she had no place in the pack house. Richard had made it clear over the years that he only tolerated her because of his love for her mother. The pack minister finished his prayers, and people began throwing dirt onto the wooden coffin. Elena watched the dark earth cover the box that held her mother's body, and felt like she was being buried too. Her mother had been the only person who ever believed she had value, who told her that not having a wolf didn't make her worthless. "I don't understand why the moon goddess would create someone like her," she heard someone say behind her. "What's the point of a werewolf who can't turn into a wolf?" Elena bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. She had asked herself that same question 1,000 times. Every other werewolf shifted for the first time on their 18th birthday. But Elena's 18th birthday had come and gone 4 years ago with nothing. No wolf, no increased strength, no heightened senses. Just ordinary, weak human Elena. As the crowd began to move away from the grave, Elena stayed behind. She knelt down and placed her white rose on the fresh dirt, tears finally falling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I'm not the daughter you deserved." She had tried so hard to be useful to the pack. She cooked in the community kitchen, cleaned the pack house, helped with the children, but none of it mattered because she couldn't shift. In werewolf society, if you couldn't turn into a wolf, you were nothing. "Elena, let's go." Richard's voice was sharp with impatience. "We have things to discuss." She stood up slowly, wiping her tears on the sleeve of her borrowed dress. As she turned to follow Richard, she felt a strange sensation, like someone was watching her. She looked around and saw most of the pack had already left, heading back to their cars. But across the cemetery, near a line of tall oak trees, stood a group of people she didn't recognize. They wore dark clothes and stood perfectly still like statues. Even from a distance, she could tell they were powerful. There was something about the way they held themselves that spoke of strength and authority. In the center of the group stood a man who seemed to command attention, without even trying. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that caught the late afternoon sunlight. But what made Elena's breath catch in her throat were his eyes. Even from 50 feet away, she could see they were an unusual golden color, and they were looking directly at her. For a moment, their eyes met across the cemetery, and Elena felt something strange happen in her chest, like a string being pulled tight. The man's expression was intense, almost hungry as he stared at her. She had never seen him before, but something about him felt familiar in a way that made no sense. "Elena!" Richard's sharp call broke the spell. She blinked and looked away, and when she glanced back toward the trees, the mysterious group was gone, as if they had never been there at all. She hurried to catch up with Richard, her mind spinning with questions. Who were those people? Why had that man been staring at her like he knew her, and why did she feel like her life had just changed in some fundamental way? Richard was already at his car, his face dark with annoyance. "Get in," he said. "We need to talk, and I don't have all day." Elena slid into the passenger seat, her heart still racing from that strange encounter. As Richard drove away from the cemetery, she turned to look back one more time. Her mother's grave was just a small mound of dirt now, covered with flowers from people who had respected her mother, but never cared about Elena herself. "Your mother is gone," Richard said bluntly as they drove through the town, "and I think we both know you can't stay in the pack house anymore." Elena had been expecting this, but it still hurt to hear. "Where will I go?" "That's not my problem," Richard replied coldly. "You're not really pack, Elena, you never were. You're just a human who happened to be born to one of us. I let you stay because your mother begged me to, but I won't continue to support dead weight." The words hit Elena like physical blows. Dead weight. That's what she was to them. A burden, a mistake, something to be gotten rid of now that her protector was gone. "You have until tomorrow morning to pack your things and leave," Richard continued. "I'm being generous by giving you that much time." Elena stared out the window at the familiar streets of the town where she had grown up. Tomorrow she would be homeless, jobless, and completely alone. She had no friends outside the pack, no family except for these people who had never really wanted her. But as the car drove past the cemetery where her mother now rested, Elena thought about those golden eyes that had watched her with such intensity. Something told her that her story wasn't over yet, even though it felt like everything was ending. She just had no idea how much her life was about to change. Elena barely slept that night. She lay in her small room in the pack house, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of the family that had never really been her family moving around downstairs. By morning, she had packed her few belongings into 2 old suitcases and a backpack, everything she owned in the world. She was carrying her bags down the front steps when the cars arrived. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the pack house, their windows tinted so dark that Elena couldn't see inside. The vehicles were expensive-looking and spotlessly clean, nothing like the older cars most of the Silver Moon pack drove. Elena set her bags down and stepped back, wondering who could be visiting. The pack members who were outside all stopped what they were doing and stared. Even Richard came out of the house, his expression confused and slightly worried. The door of the middle SUV opened, and Elena's breath caught in her throat. It was him, the man with the golden eyes from the cemetery. He looked even more impressive in the daylight, tall and powerful with an air of authority that made everyone around him seem smaller. He stepped out of the vehicle and looked directly at Elena, completely ignoring everyone else. Up close, she could see that his face was handsome in a sharp, dangerous way, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and he wore an expensive black suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body. But it was his eyes that held her attention. They were definitely golden, an unusual color that seemed to glow in the morning sunlight. And they were focused on her with an intensity that made her feel like he could see right through her. "Who are you?" Richard stepped forward, trying to assert his authority as Beta. "This is Silver Moon Pack territory." The man finally looked away from Elena to acknowledge Richard, and Elena could immediately see the difference in their power levels. Where Richard carried himself like someone important in a small pond, this stranger moved like someone who owned the entire lake. "Alpha Kieran Nightshade," the man said, his voice deep and commanding. "Blood Moon Pack." Elena heard several people gasp behind her. The Blood Moon Pack was legendary. They were the largest and most powerful pack in the region, possibly in the entire country. Their territory bordered Silver Moon land, but they rarely interacted. They were known to be wealthy, influential, and not to be messed with, and this man was their alpha. "Alpha Nightshade," Richard said, his voice suddenly much more respectful. "What brings you to our territory?" "If this is about the boundary dispute near the river—" "It's not," Kieran cut him off. His golden eyes moved back to Elena, and she felt that strange pulling sensation in her chest again. "I'm here for her." The silence that followed was so complete that Elena could hear a bird chirping in the tree above her head. Everyone stared, first at Kieran, then at Elena, then back at Kieran again, as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. "I'm sorry," Richard said slowly. "Did you say you're here for Elena?" "I did." Kieran started walking toward Elena, his movements smooth and confident. The other pack members automatically moved out of his way, as if his presence was too powerful to resist. Elena found herself frozen in place as he approached. This had to be some kind of mistake. Why would an alpha, especially the alpha of the most powerful pack in the region, want anything to do with her? "You're coming with me," Kieran said when he stopped in front of her. It wasn't a question or a request. It was a simple statement of fact. "I don't understand," Elena managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't need to understand right now, Kieran replied. You just need to trust me. Now wait just a minute, Richard stepped forward, his face red with anger and confusion. You can't just come here and take one of our pack members. She's not one of your pack members, Kieran said coldly, not even looking at Richard. You made that clear yesterday at the funeral. And you were planning to throw her out this morning anyway, weren't you? Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Elena realized that somehow this alpha knew exactly what had been happening in her life. How did you? Richard started to ask. It doesn't matter how I know, Kieran interrupted. What matters is that Elena doesn't belong here. She never did. He turned back to Elena and his expression softened slightly. You have a choice, he said. You can come with me or you can stay here and figure out how to survive on your own. But if you come with me, I promise you'll never have to feel worthless again. Elena stared at him, her mind racing. This was impossible. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Powerful alphas didn't show up and rescue unwanted girls from small-town packs. But what other choice did she have? Richard had made it clear she wasn't welcome here anymore. She had nowhere to go, no money, no job prospects. At least with this mysterious alpha, she might have a chance at survival. Okay, she said quietly. Kieran smiled for the first time since he had arrived, and the expression transformed his entire face. Good, get your bags. Elena picked up her suitcases and backpack, acutely aware that everyone was watching her. She had lived her entire life in this pack, and now she was leaving with a stranger. It should have been terrifying, but instead she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. This is highly irregular, Richard protested weakly. There are protocols for this sort of thing. Paperwork that needs to be filed. Elena was never officially registered as a pack member, Kieran said matter-of-factly. I checked. You kept her around as a favor to her mother, but you never gave her full status, so there's no paperwork needed. Elena felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Even she hadn't known that detail, but it explained so much about how she had been treated over the years. Kieran took her bags from her hands as if they weighed nothing and handed them to one of his men, who had gotten out of the other vehicles. Elena noticed that they were all tall, well-built, and carried themselves with the same confident power as their alpha. Ready? Kieran asked her. Elena looked back at the pack house where she had lived for 22 years. A few people were watching from the windows, and she could see some of the pack members standing in small groups, whispering about what they had just witnessed. None of them looked sad to see her go. She turned back to Kieran and nodded. I'm ready. He opened the passenger door of the middle SUV for her, and Elena slid inside. The interior was luxurious with leather seats and a console full of technology she didn't recognize. It was nicer than any car she had ever been in. Kieran got into the driver's seat and started the engine. As they pulled away from the pack house, Elena watched her old life disappear through the rear window. Why? She asked quietly as they drove through the town. Why what? Kieran replied, not taking his eyes off the road. Why did you come for me? You don't even know me. Kieran was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Let's just say I recognize something in you that others missed. But I'm nobody, Elena said. I don't even have a wolf. Trust me, Kieran said, glancing at her with those golden eyes. You're much more than you know. Elena didn't understand what he meant, but something in his voice made her believe him. For the first time in her life, someone was telling her she had value. As they drove toward Blood Moon territory, Elena felt like she was leaving behind everything she had ever known. But maybe, just maybe, she was driving toward everything she was meant to become. The Blood Moon pack territory was nothing like Elena had expected. Where Silver Moon had a modest pack house and a few scattered buildings, Blood Moon looked like a small city. The main pack house was a massive stone building that looked more like a castle than a home, surrounded by dozens of smaller houses, training facilities, and what appeared to be actual businesses. This is incredible, Elena breathed as they drove through the main street. Pack members stopped their activities to watch the Alpha's car pass, and Elena noticed that everyone looked healthy, well-dressed, and prosperous. The pack has been successful over the years, Kieran said simply, but Elena could hear the pride in his voice. He pulled up in front of the main pack house, and Elena had to crane her neck to see the top of the building. It was at least 4 stories tall with beautiful stonework and large windows that gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. Come on, Kieran said, getting out of the car. Let me show you around. Elena followed him up the front steps, feeling incredibly small and out of place. Her borrowed funeral dress was wrinkled from the car ride, and she was suddenly very aware of how poor she must look compared to everything around her. The inside of the pack house was even more impressive than the outside. The entrance hall had a high ceiling with a crystal chandelier, marble floors, and expensive-looking furniture. Elena had never seen anything so grand in her entire life. Alpha, a man, appeared from one of the side rooms, moving with the quick efficiency of someone used to being in charge. He was about Kieran's age, with sandy brown hair and sharp green eyes that immediately focused on Elena with obvious disapproval. Xavier, Kieran acknowledged. This is Elena. Elena, meet Xavier, my beta. Xavier's expression grew even more skeptical as he looked Elena up and down. This is the girl from Silvermoon? The one without a wolf. Elena felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Apparently word about her unusual situation had already spread. That's right, Kieran said calmly. May I speak with you privately, Alpha? Xavier asked, his tone carefully respectful but strained. Later, Kieran replied. Right now I want to get Elena settled in. Xavier's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Of course, Alpha. As Kieran led Elena deeper into the house, she could feel Xavier's disapproving stare following them. She was already making enemies, and she hadn't even been there for an hour. They walked through several beautiful rooms before Kieran stopped in front of an elevator. Elena had never been in a building with an elevator before, and she tried not to look too amazed as they rode up to the 3rd floor. This will be your room, Kieran said. Opening a door at the end of a long hallway, Elena stepped inside and gasped. The room was bigger than the entire apartment she had shared with her mother before moving to the pack house. There was a huge bed with a beautiful carved headboard, a sitting area with comfortable-looking chairs, and windows that offered a view of the pack territory stretching into the distance. This is too much, Elena said quietly. I can't stay in a room like this. Why not? Kieran asked. Because I'm nobody special. I don't deserve something this nice. Kieran was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Elena, he said finally, I need you to stop thinking about what you deserve and start thinking about what you're worth. Before Elena could ask what he meant by that, there was a knock on the door. A woman about Elena's age entered, carrying Elena's bags. She was stunning, with long red hair, bright blue eyes, and the kind of perfect figure that Elena had always envied. Alpha, the woman said, her voice smooth and confident. I brought her things up. Thank you, Natasha, Kieran replied. Elena, Natasha is one of our pack's strongest fighters. Natasha, this is Elena. Natasha looked Elena over with barely concealed disdain. So you're the charity case, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Natasha, Kieran's voice carried a warning. Sorry, Alpha, Natasha said, though she didn't sound sorry at all. I just meant it's unusual for you to bring home strays. Elena felt like she had been slapped. In Silvermoon, she had been ignored and pitied, but at least people had been polite about it. Here, it seemed like the hostility was going to be much more direct. That's enough, Kieran said firmly. Elena is a guest here, and she will be treated with respect. Natasha's smile became even more fake. Of course, Alpha. We'll all make sure to treat her exactly as she deserves. After Natasha left, Elena sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. Maybe this was a mistake, she said. Your pack doesn't want me here any more than Silvermoon did. Give them time, Kieran said. Change is always difficult for pack members to accept. But why? Elena asked, looking up at him. Why did you bring me here? What do you want from me? Kieran was quiet for so long that Elena thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, as if he was choosing his words very precisely. My pack is facing some challenges, he said. I believe you might be able to help us with those challenges. How could I possibly help? Elena asked. I don't have any special skills or abilities. I can't even shift. Sometimes the most powerful abilities are the ones that are hidden, Kieran replied mysteriously. Before Elena could ask him to explain, he was moving toward the door. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow I'll show you around the territory properly. And then he was gone, leaving Elena alone in the luxurious room with more questions than answers. Over the next few days, Elena tried to find her place in the Blood Moon pack. Kieran had told the pack leaders that she was free to explore and that she should be included in daily activities. But Elena quickly realized that being included and being welcomed were two very different things. During meals in the communal dining hall, conversations would stop when she sat down. Pack members would be polite to her face, but she could hear them whispering when they thought she wasn't listening. "Why is she here?" She heard one woman ask another. "What does the alpha want with a wolfless girl?" "Maybe he feels sorry for her," the other woman replied. "You know how he is about helping weak things." Elena tried to make herself useful by helping in the kitchens and cleaning common areas, but even that seemed to annoy people. She was either doing too much or not enough, working too hard or not pulling her weight. The only place she found peace was in the Pack's library. It was a beautiful room on the second floor, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and comfortable reading chairs by large windows. Most Pack members seemed to avoid it, preferring more physical activities, so Elena often had the space to herself. She spent hours reading about werewolf history, Pack traditions, and ancient legends. Some of the books were very old, with leather covers and pages that felt delicate under her fingers. She learned about the early days of werewolf society, about great alphas and legendary battles, about the connection between werewolves and the moon. It was in one of these old books that she first read about moon witches. According to the text, moon witches were humans who had been blessed by the moon goddess with special powers. They could heal injuries, communicate with wolves, and even influence the weather. But the book said they had all disappeared centuries ago, hunted to extinction by those who feared their power. Elena found the stories fascinating, but she didn't think much about them beyond academic curiosity. After all, what did ancient history have to do with her current situation? It was during her second week at Blood Moon that the dreams started. They always began the same way. Elena would find herself standing in a forest clearing under a full moon. The moonlight was so bright it seemed to have weight, pressing down on her skin like warm water, and always, there was a voice calling her name. "Elena." The voice would whisper, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Elena, it's time to wake up." She would try to move toward the voice, but her feet felt like they were stuck in thick mud. The harder she tried to move, the heavier her body became, until she would wake up in her bed, heart racing and covered in sweat. The dreams happened every night, becoming more vivid and intense each time. Elena began to dread going to sleep, but she was too embarrassed to tell anyone about them. Who would she tell anyway? Kieran barely spoke to her except to ask how she was settling in, and everyone else in the pack treated her like an unwelcome visitor. But the dreams weren't the only strange thing happening to Elena. She began to notice that she could sense things about people, their emotions, their intentions, sometimes even their thoughts. When she walked past the training grounds, she could feel the competitiveness and aggression of the fighters, even when they appeared calm on the surface. She also started having an unusual effect on injured animals. One day, she found a bird with a broken wing in the garden. Without thinking, she picked it up and held it gently, wishing she could somehow make it better. To her amazement, the bird's wing healed completely in her hands, and it flew away as if nothing had ever been wrong. Elena told herself it was just a coincidence, but deep down she knew something was changing inside her. Something was waking up, just like the voice in her dreams kept telling her. She just had no idea how much her life was about to change again. Elena had been at Blood Moon for 3 weeks when everything changed forever. It started as an ordinary Tuesday morning. Elena was in the library, reading another old book about werewolf legends when she heard shouting from outside. She looked out the window and saw pack members running toward the training grounds, their faces tight with alarm. Something was wrong. Elena abandoned her book and hurried downstairs, following the crowd of people streaming toward the back of the pack house. She could hear Kieran's voice, sharp with authority, giving orders to his warriors. "Form defensive lines around the main buildings," he was saying. "Protect the children and elders first. Xavier, take a team to the eastern border. Natasha, you're with me. What's happening?" Elena asked one of the pack women who was rushing past. "Rogues," the woman replied without stopping. "A whole pack of them heading this way." Elena's blood ran cold. Rogue wolves were werewolves who had been cast out of their packs for crimes like murder or treason. They lived wild without the structure and rules that kept normal werewolves civilized. They were dangerous, unpredictable, and often traveled in groups, attacking pack territories for resources. Elena wanted to help, but she knew she would only be in the way. She couldn't fight. She didn't even have a wolf to defend herself with. So she did what she always did when she felt useless. She tried to stay out of everyone's way. She positioned herself near the edge of the training grounds, close enough to see what was happening but far enough back that she wouldn't interfere with the warriors preparing for battle. The pack's fighters were impressive. They moved with coordinated precision, shifting between human and wolf forms as easily as breathing. Kieran stood in the center of it all, his presence commanding and calm despite the crisis. He had partially shifted, his eyes glowing golden and his canine teeth extended, ready for battle. Even in human form, he radiated the kind of power that made other wolves instinctively want to follow him. The attack came from the forest to the north, just as the sun was reaching its highest point. Elena heard howling first, wild, savage sounds that made her skin crawl. Then she saw them, at least 30 rogue wolves emerging from the tree line, their eyes red with bloodlust and their movements erratic with whatever madness had driven them from civilized pack life. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Blood Moon's warriors met the rogues head-on, their training and teamwork giving them an advantage despite being outnumbered. But the rogues fought with the desperation of creatures who had nothing left to lose. Elena watched in horror as the fighting raged back and forth across the training grounds. She saw pack members she had come to know getting hurt, saw the rogues' vicious attacks and the defenders' determined resistance. She felt completely helpless. That's when she noticed the rogue that had broken away from the main fight. He was massive even for a werewolf, with gray fur and scars covering his body, while everyone else was focused on the battle in front of them. This rogue was circling around toward the main pack house, where the children and elderly pack members had taken shelter. Elena realized with growing panic that she was the only one who had seen him. Everyone else was too busy fighting to notice the threat approaching from the side. The rogue was heading straight for her. Elena tried to run, but fear made her clumsy and slow. She stumbled over her own feet and fell hard, scraping her hands on the rough ground. When she looked up, the rogue was standing over her, his red eyes gleaming with hunger and his mouth open to show teeth designed for killing. "Please," Elena whispered, though she knew begging wouldn't help. Rogues were beyond reason, beyond mercy. The rogue lunged at her, and Elena threw her hands up instinctively to protect herself, knowing it wouldn't be enough, but instead of feeling teeth tearing into her flesh, Elena felt something else entirely. Power erupted from her hands like lightning made of silver moonlight. The energy hit the rogue in mid-leap and simply unmade him. 1 second, he was a snarling beast about to tear her apart, and the next second there was nothing but sparkling dust floating in the air where he had been. Elena stared at her hands in shock. They were glowing with the same silver light, pulsing with energy she could feel thrumming through her entire body. The power felt ancient and vast, like it had been sleeping inside her for years and had finally decided to wake up. The light was so bright that other pack members began to notice. One by one, the fighters stopped what they were doing to stare at Elena, who was kneeling on the ground with silver fire dancing around her fingers. Even the rogues seemed stunned by what they had witnessed. Several of them whimpered and began to back away, their animal instincts telling them they were in the presence of something far more dangerous than they were. Elena tried to stand up, but the power flowing through her was too much to control. Her vision went black around the edges and she felt herself falling. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Kieran's golden eyes, wide with an expression she couldn't identify. When Elena woke up, she was in her room at the pack house. Sunlight was streaming through the windows, so she knew several hours had passed. Her body felt different, lighter somehow, like she had been carrying a weight she hadn't even noticed and it had finally been lifted. "You're awake." Kieran's voice came from the chair beside her bed. Elena turned to see him watching her with that same unreadable expression from the training grounds. "What happened?" Elena asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "You saved us," Kieran said simply. "The rogues scattered after what you did to their leader. The pack is safe." Elena sat up slowly, testing how her body felt. The silver light was gone, but she could still sense the power underneath her skin, like a river running just beneath the surface. "I don't understand," she said. "How did I do that? What was that light?" Kieran was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. When he spoke, his voice was soft with something that might have been awe. "I knew," he said. "From the moment I saw you at your mother's funeral, I could sense what you really are. But I wasn't sure if your powers would ever awaken." What are you talking about? Elena asked, though she was starting to have a terrible suspicion. You're not wolfless, Elena, Kieran said. You're something much rarer and much more powerful. You're a moon witch. Elena felt like the world had shifted around her. That's impossible. Moon witches are just legends. They don't exist anymore. They're not legends, Kieran said firmly. They're real, and you're proof of that. You're the first moon witch to be born in over 200 years. Elena remembered the books she had been reading, the stories about humans blessed by the moon goddess with incredible powers. She had thought they were just fairy tales. My mother, Elena said suddenly. Did she know? Kieran nodded. She knew, and she bound your powers when you were born to protect you. Moon witches have been hunted almost to extinction because people fear what they can do. Your mother wanted you to have a normal life. But the binding broke, Elena said, understanding starting to dawn. Grief has a way of breaking even the strongest magical barriers, Kieran explained. When your mother died, the emotions you felt were powerful enough to shatter the binding she had placed on you. Elena thought about the dreams, the strange sensations she had been experiencing, the bird she had healed. It all made sense now. Why did you bring me here? She asked. You said your pack was facing challenges. Does this have something to do with my powers? Kieran's expression grew serious. My pack is under a curse, Elena. Our numbers have been declining for years, our strength fading. Pack members are getting sick and dying young. I've tried everything to break it, but nothing has worked. And you think I can help? I know you can, Kieran said with certainty. Only a moon witch has the power to break a curse like this one. Elena felt overwhelmed by everything she was learning. A few hours ago, she had been a worthless girl without a wolf. Now she was apparently the last of a legendary bloodline, with power she didn't understand and a destiny she hadn't chosen. I don't know how to be a moon witch, she said helplessly. I don't know how to use these powers or break curses. What if I can't help your pack? Kieran reached over and took her hand gently. His touch was warm and steady, grounding her when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. You'll learn, he said confidently. I'll help you. We'll figure it out together. Elena looked into his golden eyes and saw something she had never seen directed at her before. Complete faith in her abilities. For the first time in her life, someone believed she could do something important. Okay, she said quietly. I'll try. But even as she agreed to help, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that awakening her powers had set something in motion that she wouldn't be able to stop. The silver light inside her felt like it was just the beginning of changes that would transform not just her life, but the lives of everyone around her. She just hoped she was strong enough for whatever was coming next. The next morning, Elena felt like she was seeing the world through completely new eyes. Colors seemed brighter, sounds were clearer, and she could sense emotions from pack members even when they were trying to hide them. Walking through the pack, house was overwhelming. She could feel Xavier's worry, Natasha's jealousy, and the curiosity and fear of dozens of other pack members. But the biggest change was in how people looked at her. Word of what had happened during the rogue attack had spread quickly, and now instead of ignoring her or treating her like a burden, everyone stared. Some looked amazed, others seemed frightened, and a few appeared suspicious. They're scared of me, Elena said to Kieran as they walked through the main hallway together. They're scared of what they don't understand, Kieran replied. Give them time to adjust. Yesterday you were the girl without a wolf. Today you're the most powerful person in the territory besides me. That's a big change for everyone to process. Elena nodded, but she couldn't help feeling isolated in a completely new way. Before, people had ignored her because she seemed weak. Now they avoided her because she might be too strong. I want to learn more about what I am, Elena said, about moon witches and what I'm supposed to be able to do. I thought you might, Kieran said with a small smile. Follow me. He led her to a part of the pack house she had never seen before, a section behind the library that was accessible only through a hidden door. The hallway beyond was older than the rest of the building, with stone walls and torches instead of electric lights. This is the oldest part of the pack house, Kieran explained as they walked. It dates back almost 300 years to when the pack was first established. They stopped in front of a heavy wooden door that looked like it belonged in a medieval castle. Kieran pulled out an old-fashioned key and unlocked it, revealing a room that took Elena's breath away. It was like stepping back in time. The room was circular, with shelves carved directly into the stone walls filled with books, scrolls, and artifacts that looked ancient. In the center was a marble table with symbols carved around its edges, symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the torchlight. "This is the Pax Archive," Kieran said. "It contains our most important historical documents and magical artifacts, including everything we know about moon witches." Elena approached one of the shelves reverently. The books here were different from the ones in the regular library. Older, more fragile, and radiating a sense of power that made her skin tingle. "Your mother left something here for you," Kieran said, moving to a locked cabinet in the far corner of the room. "She asked me to keep it safe until you were ready." He unlocked the cabinet and pulled out a leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth by age and handling. He handed it to Elena, and the moment her fingers touched it, she felt a jolt of recognition. The book had belonged to her mother, and it still carried traces of her energy. "She wrote this for you," Kieran said gently. "Everything she couldn't tell you while she was alive." Elena opened the journal with trembling hands. The first page was covered in her mother's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Elena, if you are reading this, it means your powers have awakened and you are learning the truth about what you are. I had hoped to tell you these things myself, but fate rarely gives us the luxury of perfect timing. You are the daughter of two worlds, werewolf and witch, and that makes you more special than you can possibly imagine." Elena's eyes filled with tears as she read her mother's words. She turned the page and found a detailed family tree, showing generations of women with the Moon Witch bloodline. Her mother's name was there, and her grandmother's, and many others going back centuries. "We are the daughters of the moon goddess herself," Elena read aloud, "blessed with the power to heal, to see truth, to communicate with the spirit world, and to bend the very forces of nature to our will. But with great power comes great responsibility and great danger." The journal went on to explain the history of moon witches, how they had once served as bridges between the werewolf world and the divine, helping Pax connect with the moon goddess and solve problems that couldn't be handled by strength alone. They had been revered and respected, essential parts of werewolf society. But fear had changed everything. As the witches' powers grew stronger, some werewolves began to worry that they were too powerful, too different. Suspicion led to persecution, and persecution led to hunting. Most moon witches had been killed, and the few survivors had gone into hiding, binding their powers and trying to live as normal humans. "Your grandmother was the last practicing moon witch before you," Elena read. "She taught me to use my abilities, but the world was still too dangerous for us to practice openly. When you were born, I made the difficult decision to bind your powers completely, hoping you could live a normal life without the burden of our legacy." Elena looked up at Kieran, who had been watching her read with a patient expression. "My mother had powers too?" she asked. "She did," Kieran confirmed. "She was very careful to hide them, but I could sense them when I met her years ago. She was the one who told me about the curse affecting my pack." "She knew about the curse?" Kieran nodded. "She tried to help, but her powers had been dormant for so long that she couldn't access enough strength to break it. She said that only a fully awakened moon witch would be able to do what was needed." Elena continued reading her mother's journal, learning about the different types of moon witch abilities. There was healing magic, which could cure any injury or illness. There was nature magic, which allowed communication with animals and control over plants and weather. There was spirit magic, which made it possible to speak with the dead and see into other realms. And there was curse magic, the most dangerous and difficult type of moon witch power, which could both create and destroy magical bindings. "The curse on your pack," Elena said, looking up from the journal. "What kind of curse is it?" Kieran's expression grew dark. "It's a breeding curse. Pack members are having fewer children, and the children who are born are often weak or sickly. Our warrior strength is declining, and our population is slowly dying off." "Who cast it?" "A dark witch named Vera," Kieran said, his voice tight with anger. "She approached the pack 5 years ago, offering her services as a magical healer. I refused. I don't trust dark magic. She didn't take the rejection well." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Is she still out there? Oh yes, Kieran said grimly. And she knows about you now. The power you displayed yesterday would have been felt by any magical practitioner within 100 miles. She'll be coming for you. Elena's hands shook as she closed her mother's journal. I'm not ready for this. I just learned about my powers yesterday. How am I supposed to fight someone who's been practicing dark magic for years? You're stronger than you know, Kieran said, moving closer to her. Moon Witch magic is powered by light and love, while dark magic feeds on fear and hatred. In a direct confrontation, light always wins. But I don't know how to use it properly, Elena protested. What happened with the rogue was just instinct. I have no idea how to control these powers. Then we'll train, Kieran said firmly. Every day until you're confident in your abilities. Over the following weeks, Elena threw herself into learning about her heritage. She spent hours in the archive, reading everything she could find about moon witches. She learned that her powers were connected to the phases of the moon, strongest during the full moon, weakest during the new moon. She also learned that moon witches traditionally formed close bonds with alpha werewolves, their magic complementing the alpha's natural leadership abilities. The greatest werewolf packs in history had all been guided by alpha moon witch partnerships. Kieran helped her practice controlling her powers. They started with simple healing magic, with Elena learning to channel her energy to cure minor cuts and bruises. Then they moved on to nature magic, with Elena discovering she could encourage plants to grow faster and communicate basic emotions to animals. The hardest part was learning to control the silver light that had destroyed the rogue. This was pure moon witch power, the most dangerous and unpredictable of her abilities. Don't think about destroying, Kieran coached as Elena practiced on targets in a secluded part of the forest. Think about protecting. The light responds to your intentions. Elena focused on the feeling of wanting to keep the pack safe, and the silver energy that flowed from her hands was warm and controlled instead of wild and destructive. As her training progressed, Elena noticed that her relationship with the pack was changing. People were no longer afraid of her. Instead, they seemed to regard her with something approaching reverence. Pack members began coming to her with small problems. Sick children they wanted her to heal. Disputes they hoped she could resolve with her ability to sense truth. Elena found that she enjoyed helping people. For the first time in her life, she felt truly useful, truly needed. But more than that, she was developing feelings for Kieran that went far beyond gratitude. The more time they spent together, the more she came to admire his strength, his wisdom, and his genuine care for his pack. He was patient with her learning process, encouraging when she struggled, and proud when she succeeded. She was falling in love with him, and she was pretty sure he was falling in love with her too. The night before the full moon, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling and going over everything she had learned about curse-breaking magic. Tomorrow night she would attempt something that no moon witch had done in over 2 centuries. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She was still awake when she heard the screaming. Elena bolted upright, her heart racing. The sound was coming from somewhere in the pack house, high-pitched and full of terror. She threw on a robe and ran into the hallway where other pack members were also emerging from their rooms, confused and frightened. What's happening? Someone called out. The screaming stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence that was somehow worse than the noise had been. Kieran appeared at the end of the hallway, fully dressed despite the late hour. His expression was grim as he approached the group of worried pack members. Everyone back to your rooms, he ordered. Lock your doors and don't come out until morning. Alpha, what's wrong? Xavier asked, appearing at Kieran's side. Before Kieran could answer, a new voice echoed through the hallway, a woman's voice, rich and mocking. Hello? Little Moon Witch, I've been so looking forward to meeting you. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. She knew instinctively who the voice belonged to, even though she had never heard it before. Vera. Everyone get back, Kieran commanded, moving to stand protectively in front of Elena. Now, the pack members scattered, heading for their rooms as ordered. But Elena stayed where she was, her newly awakened senses telling her that running wouldn't help. Vera was here for her specifically. How brave, the voice continued, seeming to come from everywhere at once. The alpha protecting his little pet witch. How romantic. The temperature in the hallway began to drop noticeably. Elena could see her breath misting in the suddenly frigid air, and frost started forming on the windows. "Show yourself," Kieran called out, his voice steady despite the supernatural cold. "As you wish." The shadows at the far end of the hallway began to writhe and twist, pulling together into a human shape. Elena watched in fascination and horror as a woman materialized from the darkness itself. Vera looked nothing like Elena had expected. Instead of the old crone she had imagined, the dark witch appeared to be in her 30s with long black hair and pale skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. She was beautiful in a cold, sharp way that reminded Elena of a blade made of ice. But her eyes gave away her true nature. They were completely black without any white or iris visible, like looking into deep pools of shadow. "Much better," Vera said, smoothing down her dark dress. "I do so hate lurking in shadows all the time." "It's terribly inconvenient. What do you want?" Kieran demanded. Vera's black eyes fixed on Elena, and her lips curved in a smile that held no warmth at all. "I want what belongs to me," she said, "the last Moonwitch bloodline. Do you have any idea how long I've been searching for someone like her?" "I don't belong to you," Elena said, finding her voice despite her fear. Vera laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, my dear child, you understand so little about what you are. Moonwitches aren't just rare because they were hunted. They're rare because their power is so valuable that others will do anything to claim it." "What are you talking about?" Elena asked. "Dark magic requires sacrifice," Vera explained, beginning to pace back and forth in the hallway like a predator circling its prey. "The more powerful the magic, the greater the sacrifice needed. And there is no sacrifice more powerful than the life force of a Moonwitch." Elena felt sick. "You want to kill me for my power?" "Kill you? Oh no, that would be wasteful," Vera said with another cold smile. "I want to bind you to me. With your power feeding my magic, I could become the most powerful witch who ever lived. Immortal, unstoppable, feared by all." "That will never happen," Kieran said firmly, moving closer to Elena. "Won't it?" Vera asked. "Tell me, Alpha, how many of your pack members do you think I killed on my way in here? How many more will die if you refuse to hand her over?" Elena's heart lurched. "You killed pack members?" "Just a few," Vera said casually, as if she were discussing the weather. "The guards at the border were rather insistent about not letting me pass. Such dedication to duty. Such a shame it was wasted." Kieran's hands clenched into fists, and Elena could feel his rage building like a storm about to break. "You're going to pay for that," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Am I?" Vera asked. "I don't think so. You see, the curse I placed on your pack was just the beginning. A little test to see how you would react, how desperate you would become." She gestured, and suddenly the air in the hallway began to shimmer with dark energy. "I've been feeding power into that curse for 5 years," Vera continued, "building it up, making it stronger. And now with the full moon tomorrow night, I'm going to activate its true purpose." "Which is?" Elena asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. "Mass death," Vera said simply. "Every member of your precious pack will die at the exact moment the moon reaches its peak. Unless, of course, you agree to come with me willingly." Elena felt like the world was spinning around her. She had thought the curse was just making the pack weaker, but it was actually a time bomb waiting to explode. "You're lying," Kieran said. "Am I?" Vera raised her hand and dark energy swirled around her fingers. She pointed at one of the windows and the glass exploded inward, sending razor-sharp shards flying through the hallway. Elena instinctively raised her hands, and silver light erupted from her palms, creating a barrier that stopped the glass from hitting anyone, but the effort left her drained and shaky. "Impressive," Vera said, studying Elena with those terrifying black eyes. "You're stronger than I expected for someone so newly awakened. But you're not nearly strong enough to break a curse that I've been building for 5 years. "Watch me," Elena said defiantly. Vera laughed again. "Oh, you're going to try anyway? How delightful. I do so enjoy watching people fail at impossible tasks." The dark witch began to fade back into the shadows, her form becoming less solid. "You have until tomorrow night at moonrise," she called out as she disappeared. "Bring the Moonwitch to the old stone circle in the forest or watch your entire pack die in agony. Choose wisely, Alpha." And then she was gone, leaving behind only the scent of sulfur and the echo of her cruel laughter. Elena sank to her knees, overwhelmed by what had just happened. In the space of a few minutes, everything had changed. It wasn't just about breaking a curse anymore. It was about saving the lives of everyone she had come to care about. "She's bluffing," Kieran said firmly, kneeling beside Elena. "She can't really kill the entire pack with one curse." "Yes, she can," Elena said quietly. "I could feel the power she's built up. It's like a dam about to burst, and when it does..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew what would happen. "Then we fight," Kieran said. "We figure out a way to break the curse and stop her." "How?" Elena asked desperately. "She's been practicing dark magic for years, and I've known about my powers for less than a month. I'm not ready for this kind of battle." "You're more ready than you think," Kieran said, helping her to her feet. "And you won't be fighting alone." Over the next hour, as they checked on the pack members and confirmed that 3 guards had indeed been killed in Vera's attack, Elena felt a growing sense of despair. The curse-breaking ritual she had planned suddenly seemed inadequate against the kind of power Vera wielded. But as the night wore on and Elena saw the way the pack rallied around her, offering their support, expressing their faith in her abilities, refusing to even consider surrendering her to save themselves, she began to feel something else growing inside her. Determination. These people had become her family in a way that her birth pack never had. They believed in her, trusted her, were willing to risk their lives for her. She couldn't let them down. "Tomorrow night," she said to Kieran as they stood in the archive, surrounded by the books that had taught her so much about her heritage, "I'm going to break that curse and stop Vera once and for all." "How?" Kieran asked. Elena thought about everything she had learned about moon witch magic, about the power that flowed through her veins, about the connection between her abilities and the moon itself. "I'm going to do something that's never been done before," she said. "I'm going to combine moon witch magic with alpha power." Kieran looked confused. "Is that possible?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. "But I think there's a reason the moon goddess brought us together. You and me. We're stronger as a team than either of us could be alone." "What would that mean exactly?" Kieran asked. Elena took his hands in hers, feeling the spark of connection that always passed between them when they touched. "It means completing the mate bond," she said, "right in the middle of the battle, when both our powers are at their peak." Kieran's eyes widened. "Elena, that's incredibly dangerous. If something goes wrong during the bonding process, then we'll face whatever happens together," Elena said firmly. "Because I'd rather die fighting beside you than live knowing I let Vera destroy everything we care about." Kieran studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Together," he agreed. As they began making plans for what would surely be the most important battle of their lives, Elena felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. She might not survive tomorrow night, but at least she would face her. The day of the full moon dawned gray and cloudy, as if nature itself was holding its breath for what was to come. Elena spent the morning in final preparations, reviewing everything she had learned about curse-breaking magic and trying to calm her racing heart. The pack was on high alert. Warriors patrolled the borders in rotating shifts. Families with children had been moved to secure locations, and everyone who could fight was armed and ready. But Elena knew that traditional weapons wouldn't be much use against Vera's dark magic. "The pack believes in you," Xavier told her as she practiced her light magic in the training yard. "I've never seen them so united behind someone before." Elena was surprised to hear this from Kieran's beta, who had been so skeptical of her when she first arrived. "Even you?" she asked. Xavier smiled, the first genuine smile he had ever given her. "Especially me. I was wrong about you, Elena. You're not just powerful. You care about these people. That makes all the difference." As the afternoon wore on, Elena found herself thinking about her mother. Would she be proud of what Elena was about to attempt? Or would she be terrified that her daughter was walking into the same kind of danger that had forced moon witches into hiding for centuries? "Second thoughts?" Kieran asked, finding Elena sitting alone in the library as the sun began to set. "About fighting Vera?" "No," Elena said. "About involving you in something this dangerous? Every minute." Kieran sat down beside her and took her hand. "We're in this together, remember? Whatever happens tonight, we face it as partners." Elena squeezed, his hand drawing strength from his steady presence. Tell me about the stone circle, where Vera wants to meet. It's ancient, Kieran said. Older than the pack, older than any of the human settlements in this area. Legend says it was built by the first werewolves as a place to commune with the moon goddess. That's why she chose it, Elena realized. A place of power, where the connection between earth and moon is strongest. And where your abilities will be at their peak, Kieran added. As darkness fell, the pack gathered in the main hall. Elena stood before them, looking out at faces that had become dear to her over the past weeks. These people were counting on her, trusting her with their lives. I know you're all scared, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the large room. I'm scared too, but I want you to know that whatever happens tonight, being part of this pack has been the greatest honor of my life. We're not saying goodbye, called out Luna, one of the younger pack members. You're coming back to us. We all are, Elena agreed, though privately she wasn't sure any of them would survive what was coming. At 10 o'clock, Elena and Kieran set out for the stone circle, accompanied by 20 of the pack's best warriors. They moved through the forest in wolf form, all except Elena, who rode on Kieran's back, her hands buried in his thick fur. The stone circle was located in a clearing about 5 miles from the pack house. As they approached, Elena could feel the power radiating from the ancient stones, a deep thrumming energy that made her moon witch abilities respond and strengthen. The circle consisted of 12 massive stones, each twice as tall as a person, arranged in a perfect ring around a flat altar stone in the center. Moonlight streamed down through the clouds, illuminating the clearing with an ethereal silver glow. Vera was already there, waiting. She stood in the center of the circle, her hands resting on the altar stone, but she was no longer alone. Around the edges of the clearing, Elena could see shapes moving in the shadows, dozens of them with glowing, red eyes and the feral movements of creatures that had given up their humanity. Rogues, Kieran growled, shifting back to human form. She's brought an army. Welcome, Vera called out cheerfully, as if she were hosting a party instead of preparing for battle. Right on time. I do so appreciate punctuality. Elena slid down from Kieran's back and walked forward, the pack's warriors forming a protective circle around her. Her mother's journal was tucked safely in her jacket, and she could feel the weight of generations of moon witch knowledge pressing down on her shoulders. Let them go, Elena called out. This is between you and me. Oh, but that wouldn't be nearly as much fun, Vera replied. Besides, I want witnesses when I claim your power. I want them to see what happens to those who oppose me. The dark witch raised her hands and the altar stone began to glow with sickly green light. Elena could feel the curse energy building, growing stronger with each passing second. You feel it, don't you? Vera asked. The curse reaching its peak. In just a few minutes, when the moon is directly overhead, every member of your precious pack will begin dying, slowly, painfully, and there will be nothing you can do to stop it. Want to bet? Elena said, stepping forward. Silver light began to flow around her hands as she called on her moon witch powers. But as soon as she did, she felt the curse energy pushing back against her, trying to corrupt her magic and turn it dark. Struggling already? Vera laughed. You're even weaker than I thought. The rogues began moving closer, surrounding the clearing. Elena counted at least 50 of them, far more than her small group of warriors could handle in a conventional fight. Kieran, she said quietly, are you ready? I'm ready, he replied, moving to stand beside her. What happened next was something that had never been attempted in the entire history of werewolf and moonwitch relations. Elena reached out with her magic, not to cast a spell or create light, but to connect with Kieran's alpha power on the deepest possible level. She felt the moment their energies touched, like two rivers flowing together to become something larger and more powerful than either could be alone. Kieran's leadership abilities merged with her magical gifts, creating a bond that was both spiritual and physical. The mate bond formed between them in a rush of shared emotion and power that left them both gasping. Elena could feel Kieran's strength flowing into her, while her magic wrapped around him like protective armor. Impossible, Vera breathed, staring at them with wide eyes. No alpha has ever bonded with a moon witch during active magic use. There's a first time for everything, Elena said, her voice now carrying both her own power and Kieran's authority. The combined energy flowing through her was incredible, like trying to contain a hurricane in her human body. But instead of being overwhelmed by it, Elena felt more in control than she ever had before. She raised her hands and silver light erupted from her palms, but this time it was shot through with golden threads of alpha power. The light swept across, the clearing like a cleansing wave, and every rogue it touched simply vanished, their corrupted forms unable to withstand the pure energy. "No!" Vera screamed, pouring more power into the curse. The altar stone cracked under the strain, and the very air began to vibrate with competing magical forces. Elena could feel the curse trying to complete itself, reaching out toward the pack house where the rest of Kieran's people waited. She threw everything she had into stopping it, wrapping her light around the dark magic and slowly, carefully beginning to unravel 5 years of careful spellwork. But Vera wasn't giving up without a fight. The Dark Witch began pulling power from the earth itself, drawing on ley lines and ancient sources of energy that made Elena's teeth ache. "You think you can stop me?" Vera snarled, her beautiful facade falling away to reveal something monstrous underneath. "I've spent decades building my power. I've sacrificed hundreds of lives to fuel my magic. And that's exactly why you're going to lose," Elena said firmly. She reached deeper into the mate bond, drawing not just on Kieran's alpha strength but on his love for his pack, his determination to protect them, his unshakable faith in her abilities. That emotional connection gave her magic a focus and purity that dark magic could never match. The curse began to crack, its dark energy bleeding away like water from a broken dam. Elena could feel the corrupted magic that had been poisoning the pack starting to dissolve, replaced by the healing light of moon witch power. "It's working," Kieran said, his voice filled with awe. But Vera wasn't finished yet. With a shriek of rage, she abandoned the failing curse and launched herself directly at Elena, dark energy swirling around her like a tornado. Elena met her in the center of the stone circle, silver and black magic, clashing with enough force to shatter 3 of the ancient stones. The 2 witches fought with powers that bent reality around them, turning the peaceful clearing into a battlefield of competing forces. Elena was younger and less experienced, but she had something Vera didn't, the support of someone who loved her unconditionally. Every time the dark magic threatened to overwhelm her, Kieran's strength flowed through their bond to steady her. The battle reached its climax as the moon reached its zenith directly overhead. Elena felt her powers peak, fed by both the lunar energy and the mate bond. She gathered every ounce of strength she possessed and channeled it into one final attack. "For my pack," she whispered, thinking of all the people counting on her. "For my family." Silver light erupted from her with the force of a small sun, washing over Vera and the remains of her dark magic. The corrupted energy was consumed instantly, burned away by the pure power of a moon witch fighting to protect the people she loved. When the light faded, Vera was gone. Not destroyed, Elena realized, but banished, sent far away where she couldn't threaten the pack again. 3 months after the battle at the Stone Circle, Elena stood before the largest gathering of werewolves she had ever seen. Representatives from 12 different packs had come to witness something that hadn't happened in over 200 years, the formal recognition of a moon witch as Luna. The ceremony was being held in Blood Moon territory, but the location had been expanded far beyond the usual pack grounds. A massive pavilion had been constructed in the forest clearing where Elena had first awakened her powers during the rogue attack. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. This was where her journey as a moon witch had truly begun. Elena wore a dress that had been specially made for the occasion, its fabric woven with silver threads that caught and reflected moonlight. Around her neck hung her mother's pendant, the one piece of jewelry her mother had left behind, which Elena had discovered contained a small crystal that amplified moon witch powers. "Nervous?" Kieran asked, appearing at her side. He looked magnificent in his formal alpha attire, but it was his golden eyes that drew Elena's attention. They held the same warmth and love that had sustained her through the darkest moments of the past few months. A little, Elena admitted. I keep thinking about how this all started. 3 months ago, I was nobody. Tonight I'm being recognized as Luna by PAX from across the entire region. You were never nobody, Kieran said firmly. You just hadn't discovered who you were meant to be yet. The transformation of the Blood Moon Pack since the curse had been broken was remarkable. Within weeks, pack members who had been struggling with illness and weakness had regained their full strength. New pregnancies had been announced almost daily, and the children born since the curse breaking had all been healthy and strong. But the changes went beyond just physical healing. The pack's prosperity had increased dramatically as well. Elena's Moon Witch abilities had proven useful in dozens of unexpected ways. She could predict weather patterns for the farmers, sense the health of livestock, and even help locate underground water sources. More importantly, her connection to the moon goddess had restored something that many packs had lost over the centuries: a direct spiritual link to their divine origins. Elena, a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Richard, her former stepfather, approaching with an expression that mixed nervousness with something that might have been respect. Richard, Elena replied neutrally. She had been expecting this conversation, but that didn't make it any less awkward. I wanted to apologize, Richard said, his voice formal but sincere, for how I treated you after your mother's death. For how the pack treated you. We were wrong. Elena studied his face, using her enhanced senses to gauge his sincerity. She could feel that his regret was genuine, but she could also sense an underlying motivation that was more practical than emotional. You want something, she said directly. Richard's cheeks reddened slightly. The Silver Moon Pack is struggling. Without the prosperity that your presence brought to Blood Moon, we're falling behind. Our alpha is aging and we need guidance. And you thought you'd ask the girl you called worthless to help you, Elena said with a slight smile. I was hoping you might be willing to consider establishing a formal alliance between our packs, Richard said carefully, perhaps sharing some of your knowledge about Moon Witch practices. Elena looked over at Kieran, who nodded slightly. They had discussed this possibility and others like it. Word of Elena's abilities had spread throughout the werewolf community, and several packs had already approached them seeking help with various problems. I'll consider it, Elena said finally. But any alliance would be between equals, not between a powerful pack and a struggling one begging for help. Richard nodded eagerly. Of course. Whatever terms you think are fair. After Richard left, Elena shook her head in amazement. 6 months ago, he couldn't wait to get rid of me. Now he's practically begging for my help. Power changes how people see you, Kieran observed. But what matters is that power hasn't changed who you are. The formal ceremony began at moonrise. Elena and Kieran stood together in the center of the pavilion, while pack leaders from across the region offered their recognition and support. But the most important moment came when an elderly woman stepped forward. The oldest surviving werewolf in the territory, someone who remembered stories passed down from her own grandmother, about the days when moon witches regularly worked, alongside alpha pairs, by the authority granted to me by age and tradition, the elderly woman said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent crowd. I formally recognize Elena Blackwood as a moon witch of the highest order, Luna of the Blood Moon Pack, and spiritual advisor to all werewolves who seek her guidance. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Elena barely heard them. She was too busy staring up at the full moon, where she could swear she saw a figure looking down at her with approval, a beautiful woman with silver hair and kind eyes, who could only be the moon goddess herself. Thank you, Elena whispered, knowing somehow that her words would be heard. The figure in the moon smiled and nodded before fading away, leaving Elena with a sense of peace and rightness that she had never experienced before. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn. Pack members from multiple territories mingled freely, sharing stories and forming connections that Elena knew would strengthen the entire werewolf community. Several young women approached her throughout the night, asking about moon witch abilities and whether it was possible that they might have dormant powers of their own. Test them, Elena told Kieran as they watched a group of teenage girls trying to make flowers bloom by concentrating very hard. If there are others out there with moon witch bloodlines, we need to find them and train them properly. Agreed, Kieran said. The werewolf world needs more people like you. As the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Elena found herself standing once again in the spot where she had first felt her powers awaken. So much had changed since that terrifying day when the rogue had attacked and her silver light had erupted without warning. "Any regrets?" Kieran asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Elena leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart and the warm strength of their mate bond. "None," she said firmly. "Well, maybe one small regret. What's that?" "I wish my mother could have seen this," Elena said softly. "I wish she could have known that her daughter became someone worth being proud of." "She knew," a gentle voice said behind them. Elena spun around to see Xavier approaching, but his expression was different than usual. Softer, almost ethereal. "Xavier?" Kieran asked uncertainly. But it wasn't Xavier speaking anymore. The voice that came from his mouth was unmistakably feminine, unmistakably familiar. "Mom?" Elena whispered. "Hello, my beautiful daughter," her mother's voice said through Xavier's form. "I've been watching you, and I am so incredibly proud of who you've become." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "How is this possible? Moon witches can speak with spirits, remember?" Her mother replied with a gentle laugh. "I asked the moon goddess for permission to visit you on this special night." "I miss you so much," Elena said. "I know, sweetheart. But look at everything you've accomplished. You've not only fulfilled your destiny as a moon witch, you've restored the connection between our people and the werewolf community. You've become the bridge between worlds that our bloodline was always meant to be." Elena looked around at the remnants of the celebration, at the pack members cleaning up and talking excitedly about the future, at Kieran standing beside her with love and pride shining in his golden eyes. "I was so scared for so long," Elena admitted. "Scared that I wasn't good enough, that I would never amount to anything. And now?" her mother asked. Elena stood straighter, feeling the weight of her new responsibilities but also the strength to carry them. "Now I know who I am," she said confidently. "I'm Elena Blackwood, Moon Witch and Luna of the Blood Moon Pack. I'm the daughter of two worlds, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Her mother's spirit smiled through Xavier's features. "That's my girl. Take care of each other and remember, your story is just beginning." The spirit faded, leaving Xavier blinking in confusion as his own consciousness returned. "What just happened?" he asked, looking around as if he had just woken up from a dream. "Magic," Elena said simply, wiping away happy tears. As the sun rose over Blood Moon territory, Elena stood with Kieran and watched their pack members beginning a new day. Children who had been born healthy and strong since the curse was broken played in the gardens. Adults who had regained their full power worked together on projects that would benefit the entire community. And in the distance, Elena could see the representatives from other packs departing with new hope and purpose, carrying word of the Moon Witch Luna back to their own territories. "What happens now?" Kieran asked. Elena thought about the young women who had asked about Moon Witch training, about the packs that had requested help with their own problems, about the ancient knowledge contained in the archive that could benefit werewolves everywhere. "Now we build something new," she said. "A future where moon witches and werewolves work together like they were always meant to. A world where no one has to feel worthless or alone." Kieran smiled and pulled her closer. "I love your dreams. They're not just dreams anymore.